Hey everyone, my name is Gabriel Biderman from National Parks at Night, and today we're going to talk about processing your star point images in Starry Landscape Stacker. But before we get started, click on that subscribe button below, and that way you can follow us on YouTube and get all of our free night photography education. Okay, so what is Starry Landscape Stacker? Starry Landscape Stacker is an application for Mac users only. Sequitur is the PC version. Okay, and basically it is a really good solution for those of us who like doing Milky Way and star point photography. Instead of using one image that's usually shot at a very high ISO and really kind of maxing out, our shutter, short shutter speeds and trying to squeeze all of this image quality out of one image, we can take multiple images, stack them together, get lower noise, and nice sharp stars with it. Okay, so really essential tool. It's something that I am integrating into my star point photography processing. Okay, so let's walk you through it. You're going to use we're going to use Lightroom. We're going to use Starry Landscape Stacker, and then we're going to finish in Photoshop. Okay, if you don't have Lightroom, you can do a lot of these same adjustments in Camera Raw as well. So first off, shooting considerations for Starry Landscape Stacker. You need to shoot more than one shot. Okay, they advise doing minimum of 10, and usually the sweet spot is going to be about 20 images, and you're going to take them in succession. Once you kind of get all of your settings once you get all of your settings in the field, and you settle in on that exposure, and again, instead of taking one, put your intervalometer on and just trigger and do multiple shots in succession, 10, 20. Or even, when I'm out there in the field, oftentimes I'm shooting, especially if it's a really good composition, I might shoot it for an hour, just because, again, the Earth rotates and the alignment of the Milky Way and stars will change throughout the night. So spending an hour kind of really working on that, and then you kind of have groups of images that you can pluck from and work on in the field, a couple different variations. What you see on the screen here now, though, is I have 9 shots. This is taken in Capitol Reef, and there was no moon, so it was really dark out. And I have 9 shots here, and so I didn't hit the minimum 10, but it still did a really good job. But again, you want to hit 10 to 20. And then I have, so let's take a look at that. So here was my first set of images that I took. And if we look here, this is a typical no moon exposure setting. I'm at ISO 6400 with my Nikon D5. I was shooting with the IRIX 15mm lens and all the way wide open at 2.5 for 25 seconds. And that's giving, let's look at the histogram here and compare it to the sky. Obviously, this, the spike right here is the foreground, which is very, very dark. And typical with no moon, Milky Way, star point shots is the fact that we're exposing for the sky, but oftentimes the foreground is dark and suffers. And unless we can light paint, we really have to think of other solutions to kind of hopefully raise up that exposure. I'm going to show you a tip on this and how we can blend it together as well. So we have those 9 shots in succession. Okay, and what I also did was I took an exposure for the foreground. Okay, so instead of 25 seconds at 6400 ISO, I dropped it down to a slightly cleaner ISO, 1600, which is really very clean with the D5. And this one, again, think of it, we're taking 2 different pictures for 2 different sections of the single image we're going to end up with. So the first few shots were all about the sky, and then we want to make sure we have a better foreground with more information in it to blend those 2 images together. So that one was 25 seconds. This one was 5 stops more in 13 minutes exposure, and that was able to get some real nice, detail here into the road. And again, look at the histogram here. I didn't want to make this a daylight looking foreground. I want to kind of still have it be dark, and when I'm blending with the night sky, it'll look more realistic. So moving that histogram from being kind of crushed on the left and moving slowly over to the middle with a dark sky to something that's just kind of a regular histogram, sort of in the middle. We've got obviously some dark areas, but it doesn't spike up to the front, and even this bright area is really the bright sky. And I'm really not even thinking about that. I'm thinking just only for the foreground. And we're going to show you how we're going to take those and blend them together to make that as the final shot. Okay? But let's first get to the beginning. So what we'll do, how to prep your file for Starry Landscape Stacker. Now, Starry Landscape Stacker, when we're going to stack all these images, Starry Landscape Stacker, or SLS, as I'm going to call it from now on, this is too contrasty for it. It can't see the dimmer stars. So what we're going to do is going to go into our Develop module, and we are going to take the contrast all the way down. This is a typical move with SLS, is bring the contrast all the way down to -100. That's going to kind of flatten it out, and it'll let us see more skies and more stars and more detail in the sky. I'm also going to bump up the exposure just a little bit. Again, it's going to brighten the sky up a little bit, brighten those stars. Want to be careful not to brighten the stars so much that we're going to lose any sort of detail along the edges and they'll just blow out. But that's my typical move for prepping in the basic module there. We're going to also go into the detail section, and we're going to take the sharpening. See, this is sort of the default for it. And we're just going to take it all the way down. We're going to zero out that, and we're going to also make sure that our noise reduction is also zeroed out all along. So zero out everything here. Main thing here is, again, we want sort of that raw file to kind of have SLS work with. Noise reduction, SLS does a great job with, and sharpening we're going to do after the effect. We don't want to create any artifacting prior to blending these multiple images together. The third thing, you're going to want to go to the lens correction section, and you're going to want to click on remove chromatic aberrations, and then you want to go to the manual section that's in your profiles and manual section. And then if there is vignetting, which is kind of common with these super wide angle lenses that we use for a lot of night photography, they just want to open that up a little bit, and somewhere just to kind of keep an even exposure. So for this one, around 35 on the positive, plus 35 on the vignette. And that's about it. That's all you need to do to prep your file for Starry Landscape Stacker. Now, I worked on one image, and as we know in Lightroom, it's really easy to, once you work on one image, you can select all. And in the Develop module, once you've selected them all, which we'll see them down here, we can synchronize the settings so that and here we have them all selected. We're going to synchronize, and we can see that effect going across all of them down there. Okay. And now that I've sort of flattened all these files and prepped them for a Starry Landscape Stacker, it's not a plugin to Lightroom or Photoshop. It's its own separate program, so we have to export the files out. So I'm going to go back. I've selected all the images, and I'm going to export them. And there's a couple key things you want to hit in the export section. So first off, choose your folder where you want to put it into. I don't do any renaming or anything like that, but it's really important that you select a TIFF file, okay? You want to do an uncompressed file. I also select the biggest color space, Pro Photo RGB. No compression, and then also big is just to make sure that you're choosing the 16-bit over 8-bit. You want, again, the biggest file, the most information to be saved from what we have in Lightroom and brought out, okay? Resolution, again, do not resize. Again, it should be a full-size, uncompressed file. So make sure this button is not clicked. And then another important thing is to make sure that you do have the metadata being saved to the file. Okay, for the metadata, Starry Landscape Stacker does use that information. It wants to know the time and the timing between images as it kind of stacks them, because it's going to use that information to align the stars and and give you that great shot. So make sure that you are clicking and have that. If you want to remove person and location information, you can do that, but we need all the other data. So you're going to do that, and you're going to click that, which I've already got them saved, which they are right over here. Okay, so we save them. We can see that they're all TIFFs right on over there. Okay, then we're going to open up Starry Landscape Stacker, which looks like this. Okay, you want to, and you can always, if you're new to it, I advise there's some really great education on their website, both videos and written out. You could do that, but you got me for the ride this time. So it defaults to where do you want to get these files? Where do you want to bring these files? And so we're going to navigate to where they were. They were saved here in my SLS example file. And we're going to select all of them. And we're going to open them up. And depending upon how many files you have and how powerful your computer is, if you're saving 20 constantly, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But if you have those higher megapixel files, this is where that stacking could create you to make a cup of coffee in the meantime. But again, these 9 files kind of come in fairly easily. All right, and here we go. And I have to say that Starry Landscape Stacker is a pretty intuitive program. You really want to look at your workflow section over here. And this is your guide. This is going to give you all the information you need to walk you through the program. So first things first is we are in the Adjust the Dots in the Sky section. Okay, and it tells you right here, select how many dots to start with. Remove the red dots on the horizon and on the ground. Also add red dots in the sky area where there are no red dots. When you're done, press Find Sky. So well, let's take a look around here. We can zoom in and move around just to make sure there are no red dots. That is, I believe, a noise, right? We're looking for these sort of measly, really very specific red dots. And there's nothing in the foreground here, so we can kind of go back down to this. Where you might find it in the foreground is if there's maybe a street light there, because Starry Landscape Stacker might see that bright light and think it is a star. And so you'd go there and you would erase any red dot that was a street light. Maybe you were getting reflection in a lake and the stars were reflecting there. Then you would erase those as well. So that's where the erase tool comes into play. And it says to do also anything that's kind of close along the horizon, which this is doing a pretty good job right along the horizon. And what I'll say is that there are stars all along the horizon. Like if there were stars stopping here, then I would remove them. If there was a big cloud here, and maybe some stars were coming through, but there was a lot of clouds, I would erase them out of that and just keep the cloud in there, because it just, things might get wonky with trying to blend that mask area in with the stars and the clouds. So that's another reason where you'd remove it. But this one's looking pretty clean. You know, there's that star that's marking that star along the horizon. So it's doing a really good job. And in fact, I might add a red dot, because check it out. There's a star there. There's a star there. So I might just help define the mask a little bit more by putting a few more dots where we have some stars. Even though stars come right into the mountains here. Okay. And you can kind of even do this pretty easily like this. And everything else, I mean, you don't have to press on every one. This is going to do a really good job. It's really paying attention to that horizon line and making sure, again, no red dots on the foreground, mostly in the sky where there are stars. Luckily for us, a lot of stars in the sky here. So next thing we do after we select that, okay, is we're going to find the sky. And when we click on that, it basically creates the mask for the sky. And it did a really good job. And this is why I personally love Starry Landscape Stackers. I hate creating masks. And this makes it just so easy. Now we'll do a little bit of cleanup in here, because it looks like we're missing some stuff. And I like to be a little bit careful here. You know what I mean? This is looking pretty good right over here, but let's clean up this over here. Let's bring that a little closer. Okay. We'll make the brush size a little bit smaller. Okay, this I don't need to worry about much over here. Okay, but this we'll just get this taken care of over here. We can even take care of that right over there. And then just along the edge, really check those edges out. But that looks really good. Zoom to fit. Okay. And you could also paint the sky, you know, the ground as well. But that was pretty simple, pretty easy. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to align. And voila. There it goes. So it did a really good job here. And I got rid of the mask, but it's now there, and it's just showing you. And now what your option is how would you like to align this mask? Remember, we put 9 images on there. So which of those 9 images do you want to choose? It might not be a big difference. We can look at the composite. We could look at, I usually choose the first image. Now we can see, right, the Starry, the Milky Way is at this angle. And let's look at the last image right here. So that was number 35. Let's look at 43. And it's moved a little bit. And again, if you've taken 20 or 30 shots and you like where the alignment is in the sky better in one, then choose that. Or maybe there are some specific stars in the sky that maybe go out of the frame, or, you know, go behind trees or mountains or stuff like that you want to have. So that's where you kind of where the decision making for which of these files you want to choose. For me, the reason why I took this image is it was all about the road meeting the Milky Way. And the first image sort of has what I feel is sort of that best angle of it. You know, we still have the galactic core up here close to the ground, and I just like that angle, you know, going with the sky. So I'm going to choose that one. And then we just hit align and composite. And now it's doing its sandwiching all the images together to create that blended file. And again, it doesn't take that long. It's pretty fast. Our last option here is what algorithm do you want to save it at? And there's a few different options here. As we kind of click on here, select the composition algorithm and save the result. Okay, so we have minimum horizon noise, which that's the default, and that's the latest algorithm created by Starry Landscape Stacker. This is 1.8 version, and that came out in 1.7. So this is the newest one, and basically what it does, it's reading it to the newer cameras and their higher ISOs, and it's also taking the stars by the Milky Way and making them slightly brighter than the ones surrounding the Milky Way. So it's kind of recognizing that and doing that algorithm to it. Also, with minimum horizon noise is basically we want to look around the horizon here and just see. This one is basically going to take that and really make it a clean sort of horizon, free of noise. We can see the noise in the landscape area, but there's minimum noise over here. Now, what we want to look out for along this horizon line is it doing a good job with the mask and that blend, or are we getting star trails or duplication of stars? And I don't see any there for this image. If we did see that, we would choose minimum horizon star dupe. Okay. There's also mean minimum horizon noise and mean minimum horizon star dupe. This is basically the older algorithm that Starry Landscape Stacker was using. Some people might prefer that a little bit more. You can compare the differences. I really didn't see much, you know, difference between the two. Hard to see here. So I'm going to default to the latest algorithm. There's also a max value and a min value. And These ones also will show and reveal anything like for max value. This is a good one where you can kind of see any planes or any satellites or meteors. It's going to show all those lights through. I would use this sometimes because here's the key here is we can save this multiple times. All right. So for instance, let's go back to our default. Okay. And when we save it, it's going to say, what do you want to call this? And it defaults to the name of your file, the number that you chose, as well as what algorithm it used. And I'm going to stay with that and save it there because that helps me remember what I saved it as. Also lets you, if you want, save a copy of the image with the mask. You know what? Well, I saved it, but I got to uncheck that. I really don't use that mask, so it's just taking up more space in there. But if you wanted to just have the mask, you know, that you can drop in elsewhere, you have that mask as well. Okay, so it's saved that, but here you go. Now you can also do a max value, and say you've got a, you know, a nice meteor or a satellite or something like that that you want to keep with that image, then you'd save that one and then blend that together in Photoshop, and that way you can have the best of both worlds. You have the clean, less noise sky, starry landscape sky, and then you could just, you know, brush in any of the satellites or meteors that came through. So that's a pretty cool feature. Pro tip on that one. Okay, but otherwise we are done with it. So the as I said, this is a standalone software. So what we're going to do next is we need to import that file into back into Lightroom. It doesn't default to it. So here it was. We had it in the, okay, and we're gonna uncheck all. We're just gonna check because these were what we exported out. So we just want to bring in that new file that new stacked file, which is this one right over here. And I like the folder that it's in, so I'm just going to choose to add photos to this catalog without moving them. Okay, everything else is good over here. So I'm going to import that one in. Okay, and I'm just going to drop it back into my folder over here so we can see it all. Okay, so this is what we got. Okay, and now we want to go to do our processing, our Milky Way processing. But here's the cool thing, especially if we know we're going to blend two different images. Again, like I had, this is going to be my foreground, and this is really just technically my sky shot. I mean, I guess if I wanted, I could squeeze a little bit and keep this a single shot. But because I'm only going to take this sky out of it, I don't need to worry about creating any sort of masks or anything in Lightroom. I can just, you know, do the processing that I would want to do, which first off, I want to add that contrast back into I want to add that contrast back into the file. So I'm going to go to a strong contrast here, and there we go. And let's see what and then again, I'm just looking at what it's doing to the I'm only considering what it's doing to the Milky Way. So bring the highlights up. Bring those stars, make them a little bit brighter. And also going to just, again, creating contrast, bring down a little bit of that darkness. We can see a little bit of that air glow that was there. Okay. All right, there's my nice curve there. I'm going to add some clarity to that. I usually go around 20 or 30 for that. I'm going to add some dehaze as well. And boom, now we're popping. Okay. I'm going to also add the sharpening back into it. With sharpening, we're going to zoom in, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go right around 60 for the sharpening. Increase the radius a smidge, the detail, bring that up to, say, 50, and then mask it pretty much all the way, because again, I'm just really looking at making those stars points. Okay, and there I go. that's, you know, my quick down and dirty processing the Milky Way sky. I can definitely get more into it, but there is our really nice sky. So the next tip, and we've seen a couple of our videos and a couple of our blogs kind of go into the blending, but let's just show you, you know, the benefit of this here. So we're going to take this shot here, and then this one I've already worked on. It looks like this image right here, and kind of just a little movement, little work on it right there. So I'm going to take these two images, and I'm going to go into Photo, Edit in, Open as Layers in Photoshop. All right, I'm going to put this guy up top. All right, and then we're going to do is go to the add a layer mask to the top one. Okay, and we're going to use our brush right here, and we're going to use black to reveal what is underneath. And let's might as well, I'm going to just do a big broad stroke to begin with. Opacity is at 100%. Okay, and so we're just going to reveal the foreground here. Okay, and then with something like this, here's where, you know, you gotta, with these blending, especially when you have extremes of exposures, is that you want to make sure that you're blending and using that opacity, especially when you get close to that horizon line. You don't want just that dark line separating them. So what we'll do here is we'll kind of zoom in to fit the screen to 100%. And we'll get down to here. Okay. Take the brush and bring our opacity down to, like, let's start it with like 30% or so, and just kind of open these up. And that's also getting rid of a lot of that noise, you know, from the higher ISO shot. And I'm using the 1600 one here. And actually, let's take this brush and let's not make it, yeah, it's no hardness here, so okay, we can make it a little bit smaller. Okay, there we go, that'll control it. And some of this I just also might keep dark, or I might again go back and forth. And let's just take a look at this back to fit the screen. I mean, that's looking pretty good. There's some cleanup over here I'll probably want to do. Let's go into that area. Right, we can see the star trails from the other shot kind of coming in here with that broader stroke. So let's touch that up. And this one we can kind of go back up to the opacity. And just really work those edges to really kind of blend it together. I might, there's just a little noise. I might just go in there and clone that stuff out. But looking at, because that's really, you can't see it here, but it's not, it's going to show on the, it'll show on a print. What I might do at a lower opacity, like 26, like see this rock is a little bright, which kind of might darken this area. And kind of just think how, again, you want to lead people's eyes through here. Actually, shoot, this way. Right, the white. We want to reveal, show some of the Milky Way, the darker shot. So there we go. Okay. Yeah, so that kind of looks a little bit more realistic. And now we have that combination of the Starry Landscape Stacker clean, really nice clean sky. Let's take a zoom into that. Really nice. Really nice. And we've got the foreground as well. And we can just save this puppy. And that'll bring it right back into Lightroom. And you can continue working on it and finessing it from there. So I hope this has inspired you to work with Starry Landscape Stacker, especially if you are into any Star Point and Milky Way photography. Again, it's for Mac users only right now. I believe it's $29. You can buy it from the link in our blog below. And for PC users, again, the solution that we have, the solution that is out there is Sequitur. And we hopefully will be doing a video on that in the next couple of months as well. It operates very similar, same idea. It's just the user interface obviously is going to be a little bit different. And that program is a freeware program. So that's pretty cool for PC users. All right, again, my name is Gabriel Biderman. Thanks for your time and seize the night.